Hello everyone, and this is my review for TNA Impact Wrestling on March 7th, 2013. And all in all, I feel that this go-home show before the TNA Lockdown pay-per-view was honestly kind of a letdown in the terms of story building for me. Just in the matches-wise, all the matches were extremely fine. I actually enjoyed all the matches that were on the show. I will go off on one other thing that I did like. I always have liked the concept of doing a best 2 out of 3 matches for the Lethal Lockdown to see who would get the man advantage going into Lethal Lockdown for the, well, this year Team Aces and Eights versus Team TNA. But the biggest problem I have with that, there is one big problem with it. And it's usually these kind of series of matches to see who gets the man advantage seems to always favor the heels. I mean, in general, it typically favors the heels. I don't think they've ever done a year where the face team has gotten the man advantage going into the pay-per-view itself. Now, all in all, the matches were extremely fine. I really liked the tag team match with Samoa Joe and Magnus versus Doc and Garrett Bischoff. That was extremely fun to watch. Of course, James Storm and Mr. Anderson was fun. Same with Sting and Devon. The other weird thing about it was just the placement of the matches in general. Now, granted, I know out of the matches, the best one was Mr. Anderson and James Storm. Typically, in most senses, you would think that would be the best way of ending the series of matches. But typically, you would think they would want to end the series of matches with the team captains in general. And instead of having them go last, they had them go first. So it just felt weird in the placement. But like I said, I like that concept. The only downside to it is that it will always generally favor the heels. The other aspect that I liked was the fact that they actually that they didn't wait to reveal the VP until the pay-per-view, and Kurt Angle was coming out to actually say who it was. Obviously, he got beat to the punch by initially with Wes Briscoe, and then that started the brawl that looked like they were going to get split up. And then he gets Kurt Angle gets low blow by D'Lo Brown, who says, "You know what? I'm going to spoil your fun. I'm just going to say I'm the VP" type deal. And in terms of story, actually, it's not a bad thing to have D'Lo Brown be a member of Aces and Eights, where I was actually not in favor of Taz becoming an Aces and Eights member in the past. I'm actually okay with D'Lo Brown because in the sense of, the TV program, he's management in the company. This shows that this shows that the Aces and Eights actually go higher up inside of the company in general versus just the wrestlers and superstars. So I think in this case, D'Lo Brown, probably not the best pick to become VP, to be the VP of Aces and Eights, but it definitely works, and it shows that this leads into management inside the TNA backstage. So that aspect I actually liked. Just also for the most part, the weird thing I found, they have more time to build feuds going into the Lockdown pay-per-view, but yet most of these matches that they've come up with have come within the last couple of weeks in general, and even some of the feuds. Obviously, Velvet Sky and Gail Kim for the Knockouts title, that was relatively recent that they started building that feud. Obviously, probably will be a pretty good match on the card. Just wish they would have had more time to build that. I would have probably preferred them go with Tara going into the pay-per-view with Velvet Sky, because that would have had at least a little bit more history, a little bit more background going into it, instead of Gail Kim and Velvet Sky. Also, adding Christopher Daniels and Kazarian to the tag team title match, once again, kind of just last minute there type deal. No real build going into it as well. You had the match the week before with Austin Aries and Bobby Roode versus Christopher Daniels and Kazarian, but in general, it was really put together last minute. Wish they would have, spent that time to make these feuds a little bit bigger, a little bit more meaningful. I mean, that's one reason why you actually, spend more time, have more time between the major pay-per-views to actually build those feuds instead of having the monthly ones. In that sense, where everything does seem kind of rushed. But that's where I feel like they've really dropped the ball, was building the feuds going into the pay-per-view and spending more time around it. And that just goes straight into the world title match with Bully Ray and Jeff Hardy. Honestly, they've only really had 2 weeks to build the entire feud in general, and they've spent that entire time basically in full-on respect. There's no real conflict here. I mean, you're going into a cage match with someone, and it's based completely on respect in that sense. And now, granted, storylines based around respect are actually not a bad thing. It's just the aspect that this is a cage match. It's generally a feud ender in general. It's also one of those areas where the feuds are more heated, that you would actually get these types of matches, but yet you kind of got these two guys going in there. The main event they've only really spent 2 weeks to build up in general, and they haven't had any kind of conflict. They haven't had any kind of, physical altercation around each other. And that just feels weird. It just doesn't come off well. It's supposed to be the main event of the show, usually one of the more heated, and the main event's usually one of the more heated feud spots for the pay-per-view, yet you're not getting that with this particular world title match or feud in general. And all in all, like I said, I feel like the match is going to be a really good, really fun match. It's just that the story build-up, it doesn't make you want to buy the pay-per-view in general. There was really no story build-up between Jeff Hardy and Bully Ray going into this. You have their past history, but there's nothing here in the current time to, why are they doing this? Why are they doing the cage match type deal? Outside of, it's the lockdown pay-per-view and the world title match has to be in the cage. It's just, it's not a pay-per-view seller in my mind. And I think they really dropped the ball again with the story building. So overall, this week's Impact especially, I just don't feel like they did a good enough job building the matches. Outside, of course, you have the Team TNA and Team Aces and Eights. They did a really good job with that, actually. I feel like they did a relatively good job there. The way that they built Bully Ray and Jeff Hardy calls for like some kind of major swerve at the main event in some way, shape, or form. I would be really shocked if they don't do something like that, where one of them turns heel or somebody turns heel during that match. But all in all, I don't feel like they did a good enough job building the storylines behind the matches for the pay-per-view. And overall, I just did not... matches-wise, I thoroughly enjoyed Impact. Story-building-wise, I did not enjoy it at all. So yeah, that's my review for TNA Impact Wrestling this week. I'm going to be watching the Lockdown pay-per-view, and I will be making a review for that. So I thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoy these videos and find them informative.